I know through going through my chosen inquiry that if I hold this purpose out front, then this is going to help me stabilize my seeming perception. Rather than going through all of the roller coaster of emotions that we seem to go through the day-to-day experience with the ego, we can begin to come into this consistency of mind watching and consistency of purpose through remembering that we want to hold the purpose out in front. Whether it's washing the dishes, whether it's talking to a brother or a sister, whether it's maybe you're going to work, maybe you're driving to work. What's the purpose of driving to work? Do I want peace, or do I want to get there on time? You can see how everything is always based from the purpose that we give it. Now, if we are driving to work and we want to get there on time, say we want to get there on time more than we want peace, and someone cuts us off, causing us to be late, then you can see how the ego arises from that split desire, and then you start to experience the false effects from that split desire. Well, I thought today that someone wrote in to me a few weeks ago asking if I could talk about the work by Byron Katie. So we have an example dialogue of the work of Byron Katie that we will go through later on. We don't need to put that in the chat since it's me talking. But if you guys want to follow along, you can go to onesilentmind.com/materials, and there'll be a Byron Katie example dialogue that you can follow along with this video. And so we can start off by saying that whenever we can begin to look at purpose, actually. So before we get into that, let's look at purpose. So when we grow up in the world, we tend to learn over time what purpose is. For example, we know what the purpose of a YouTube channel is. The purpose of a YouTube channel is to share videos. If we look at what the purpose is of a mobile phone, we can say that the purpose of a mobile phone is to call people. But in regards to spiritual awakening and experiencing inner peace, we are really beginning to look at a deeper purpose than we can say a form level purpose. And the purpose we're going to begin to look at today is really the purpose on the mind level. So just as the form level purpose of a YouTube channel is that the YouTube channel is there to share videos, the deeper purpose of the YouTube channel is why. What is the motivation behind the YouTube channel? Why am I sharing videos? So instead of looking at the purpose on the form level of the YouTube channel is there to share videos, we are beginning to retrain our mind to look at a much deeper purpose, which is the mental purpose, our mental desire, which is the why, the purpose behind the actions that seem to be taken on the form level. And so if we look at a YouTube channel, for example, we can begin to inquire why actually am I sharing videos on YouTube? And we can just sit and we can begin to just ponder the deeper purpose behind the actions that we seem to take every day. Am I uploading videos on YouTube to get more likes or to get high views and to become famous and to become, liked and popular by my peers and those who may find the videos? Or am I doing the YouTube channel for my own self-realization and peace of mind? So in the previous video, the previous talk that we did last week around the levels of mind, we kind of touched on the desire and why we were doing stuff on the mind level. Was it for peace or was it for lack of peace? And divine logic states that if we choose something other than peace, then that must result in lack of peace. And so, for example, if I am using a YouTube channel to get likes, and all of a sudden I upload a YouTube channel and just make videos and I share my videos out, and all of a sudden they get like 10 likes, you know, the ego is going to come up very quickly in the mind and go, oh, because of this, you're a failure and you're not doing this right, and you might as well just, you know, delete your YouTube channel. And so you can see how by beginning to look at the underlying purpose of why we are beginning to do things in our day-to-day experiences, we can come deeper towards this experience of peace. And if we follow on from the last talk that we did as well, through looking at desire, we're really just retracing the purpose back to the level of mind rather than looking at the purposes on the level of form. So for example, you know, I wake up in the morning and I get inspired to make a phone call. Now we all know what the purpose of a mobile phone is. It's to make a call. However, what we want to be asking with everything that we're doing, we don't have to be too pedantic about it, but what we want to begin to inquire about is why we are actually making that phone call. Why are we actually reaching out to that person? Is it coming from inspiration? Is it coming from the spirit? Is it coming from intuitive guidance? Or is it coming from like an egoic desire to get something or to attack something or someone? And so through tracing the purpose back to the level of mind, we can begin to question, why are we actually doing everything that we're doing day to day? Rather than going with the status quo, we want to get very clear on the purpose, because this purpose is going to lead us back to the mind level. And when we come back to the mind level, you know, that's like a halfway step. We're halfway there just to the experience of peace of mind. And so in terms of spiritual awakening and opening to an experience of peace that is ever present, we can begin to apply what I begin to call mind watching. Once our focus is taken off of the level of perception back through to the emotions, to the thought level, back to the beliefs and the desire, which is called what I like to call mind watching, we can begin to just be the presence of awareness that begins to just observe all of the thoughts and emotions that may be arising, just as how clouds arise in the sky. Now, when a thunderstorm happens in the sky doesn't mind. You know, the sky is open to all experience. The sky is open to thunderstorms. The sky is open to no thunderstorms. So whatever the appearance seems to be in the actual sky, the sky doesn't mind. You know, the sky is the sky. However, when we experience upsets, as we know, our desire is always split for something other than peace, which is, of course, lack of peace. And so what the mind is actually doing is, instead of having a singular desire for peace, the mind seems to be misidentifying itself with these arising storm clouds that seem to be happening in the sky, rather than remaining as the sky, which is behind the presence, but behind the storm clouds that are arising. And so through asking what is the purpose of everything that we seem to be doing every day, we can begin to open to the purpose of saying that we can restate the purpose of peace or lack of peace as, my purpose for everything is either going to take me to self-realization, take me to that experience of self-realization, or it's going to keep me bound in the misidentification with the ego. It's going to keep me bound to suffering. It's going to keep me bound to illusions. And so as we begin to, again, just bring everything back to the two purposes in the mind, because there's only really two decisions on the mind level. That's peace or lack of peace, whatever words you want to call that, Holy Spirit or ego, devil or, God. We can begin to bring everything back to these two critical decisions, which are still a stepping stone towards choiceless awareness or the consistent experience of peace. And so as we're going through our day-to-day experience, we want to just remember that we can bring everything back to this one purpose of mind watching and forgiveness. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if I have a YouTube video, we're just going to stick with this YouTube video example. If I have a YouTube video and I put that online, now we can begin to say, okay, I want to extend this video, but what is my purpose behind extending this video? Is it going to be for peace? Is it going to be to remain in the present? Or is it going to be because I want to get likes? Is it going to be because I want to, inflate my ego a little bit and boast and pride around how big the video may get or may not get? And of course, if the video doesn't get as big as the ego wants it to be, then the upset happens and the lack of peace stems forth from that. So we really want to remember every single experience that we have during the day. We really want to hold this purpose out front. And what is that purpose? Well, in A Course in Miracles terms, it's called forgiveness. Now, forgiveness really just means mind watching and being able to pull back the egoic projections from the level of form back to the level of mind, which is the level of misidentification with the ego. The level of mind is the sole cause for any experience, because this is where thoughts are affected from, this is where emotions stem from, and this is where our perceptions stem from as well, as we know. Perceptions are an effect of emotions, and emotion is an effect of thoughts. Thoughts are an effect of belief, and this is all an inroads into this one purpose or the core desire in the mind, or focus, whatever word you want to use. And as we are uploading that video, we can say, okay, I want to hold that purpose out front. I know through going through my chosen inquiry that if I hold this purpose out front, then this is going to help me stabilize my seeming perception. Rather than going through all of the roller coaster of emotions that we seem to go through the day-to-day experience with the ego, we can begin to come into this consistency of mind watching and consistency of purpose through remembering that we want to hold the purpose out in front. Whether it's washing the dishes, whether it's talking to a brother or a sister, whether it's maybe you're going to work, maybe you're driving to work. What's the purpose of driving to work? Do I want peace, or do I want to get there on time? You can see how everything is always based from the purpose that we give it. Now, if we are driving to work and we want to get there on time, say we want to get there on time more than we want peace, and someone cuts us off, causing us to be late, then you can see how the ego arises from that split desire, and then you start to experience the false effects from that split desire, which may be in the form of the ego ranting in the mind because you're late, and this means that you're going to get fired. And it brings up all of these hypothetical images and hypothetical stories in the mind of how you might or may not, get fired or be punished and so on and so forth. And so when I left my job in 2017, I really had to go through this experience of getting very, very clear on my purpose day to day. Because at this time, I was still going through my, inner work. I was still going through the inner inquiry and getting very clear on what the hell was actually going on, what this whole spiritual experience was really about. Now, as we're going through, the seemingly awakening journey, which is still just a stepping stone metaphor, we seem to be like, where is this actually going? Like, what am I actually doing this for? And so, to use another example for what I'm trying to convey here is, let's say we want to go to the supermarket and we want to bring a spouse of ours. Now, if we say, hey, we're going to the supermarket, and we get in the car and we start driving to the supermarket, but all of a sudden you start, going down a road that leads away from the supermarket, your spouse is going to go, hang on a second, aren't we going to the supermarket? And this is the same as saying, well, we're going through our day-to-day experience and we can say we want peace, but all of a sudden we forget our purpose of wanting peace or self-realization. And all of a sudden we're going off on different roads that lead away from this experience. And we can tell we have gone on a separate road that leads away from the supermarket by the way that we feel. So we can begin to just pay attention initially to the emotions that seem to rise, and our emotions are a good indicator of what purpose we are choosing in the mind, ego or spirit, lack of peace or peace, whatever word you want to use. And so what I'm really saying here is, when we are driving to the supermarket, the only way to get to the supermarket is to go down the road which leads to the supermarket. And this means overlooking any other roads which don't lead to the supermarket. And so this is the same as saying, well, if I want peace, then I have to overlook all of the other goals which lead away from the peace. And what are these? What is an example of this other goal that I'm talking about? Well, it could be something as simple as just wanting that parking space. If I want that parking space more than I want peace, then, and I'm driving to that parking space and all of a sudden someone comes along and takes that parking space before I get it, then, oh my gosh, I wanted that parking space. And you can see how the ego comes up, and all of a sudden there's this huge confusion and huge reaction to something that doesn't really even matter at the end of the day. And you can see how this is all stemming from one's own decision for desiring or focusing on something that takes one away from what one truly wants. And everyone that's on the spiritual journey is, seeking God, seeking peace of mind, seeking inner peace, whatever word you want to use. All of us are on the seeming journey, metaphorically, for this one experience, to come into this one experience, to realize this one experience. And so we just want to remember to begin to hold out this one purpose of forgiveness, this one purpose of peace out in front, no matter what seems to be happening during the day. And so we can begin to look at the Byron Katie worksheet here. Let me go ahead and just open it on my phone here. Because if we do seem to take a road which leads away from the supermarket, then inquiry such as the work by Byron Katie, which we will go through here, will allow us just to unwind from the road that we have taken to get us back on the main road. And so whatever form of inquiry that you use, the levels of mind, the 5-step inquiry, the work by Byron Katie, prayer, whatever inquiry seems to work for you, these are all just designed to bring the mind back on track to the supermarket, back on track to what is my goal? What is my goal? And we want to be really clear on what our goal is and hold this out front. And so again, for those of you that want to follow along with us now, you guys can log on to onesilentmind.com/materials/the dash or little dash and work. And we'll be looking at the work, Self-Inquiry by Byron Katie. Now on this example dialogue we have, I love Byron Katie's questions that she has. Like, they're very simple. Now, Byron Katie was the one person that I began to listen to when I initially started going through my spiritual awakening. So I can relate to everything that is written here, just because this was the main inquiry I used at the very beginning, which is very sweet, very, very sweet, because we get to just begin to unravel all of the complexities of the ego. We get to unravel all of the illusions in the mind which seem to bring on this misperceived upset. And why is that so great? Because we get to bring it back to our innocence. We get to bring it back to peace. We get to bring it back to the simplicity of the present. And so on this example dialogue we have here is, what is the perceived upset? Now, the person that has written in and done the upset is stated, I am upset with my mum and dad because they don't trust me in driving the car. Great, that's beautiful. This can be used beautifully in order to knock us back on track to the main road, which leads us back to the supermarket. So anytime an upset comes up, to the spirit, or to, with the focus, with the bigger picture in mind of self-realization or the experience of inner peace, this is beautiful. We have metaphorically all of heaven cheering because something has come up and we are beginning to question it. And so the first question is it true? Yes or no? And so the person who has written in doing the inquiry here says yes. Great. Number 2, can you absolutely know it's true? In which the beloved has stated no. Question number 3, how do you react and what happens when you believe that thought? The thought being, my mum and dad don't trust me in driving the car. The beloved writes, I feel dismissed, small, lonely, and unloved. I feel like I need to do more to be trusted. There are these mental stories or hypothetical images in my mind that I have to have them approve of me, or else a consequence will occur in the future, like me getting kicked out of the house. I feel like I need to defend and somehow make sure that they ask me to drive them somewhere. I feel like my sense of worth and peace of mind comes from getting approval from others. I feel like I need to show them in many different ways that I am responsible and have control over things to avoid them saying things to me like this again. So this is very beautiful because we are beginning to just go deeper than the perceived upset on the level of form. We're beginning to question, why is this upset arising? Because once we get clear on why this upset is arising, then we can begin to look at the seeming tricks that the ego uses to keep the mind in this upset. And then the next phase from that is stepping out of that. So first it arises, we look at it, and then later on we find, oh my gosh, I'm not upset by this anymore because we have stepped out of the trick that the ego seems to use. And so the question number 4 is, who or what would you be without the thought? The beloved answers, unbothered, peaceful, trusted, and loved. Isn't that sweet? Number 4 here, who or what would you be without the thought, is really beginning to allow us to see, oh my gosh, maybe my upset has nothing to do with the form at all. Maybe the form hasn't changed at all, but the only thing that has changed is the thoughts that has arisen in the awareness. Now, I remember from the parable of my life that I was sitting at my desk one day, and the form hadn't changed. 1 minute, I was I was perfectly peaceful. And the next minute, I'm in fear. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? I noticed the change in emotions in my stomach, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on here? Now, the form hadn't changed at all. The only thing that had changed was the mind believing an unloving thought that had arisen in the mind. And this allowed me to see, oh my goodness, maybe the form is never the cause of the upset. Maybe I can open to seeing that the cause of the upset is really on the mind level, and what the mind seems to be believing on the level of the mind. And so this is a very beautiful way of just, trying on different experiences and really opening to this experience of maybe I am in full control of what I experience and I am not a victim of the world at all. Maybe, just maybe, I can focus on my own mind, and that will shift with this inquiry rather than waiting for some form outcome to shift, which implies that I'm a victim of that form outcome. And so the next question on the inquiry is, turn the thought around, try them on, and see if you can provide evidence for the turnaround. What are the turnarounds to my parents do not trust me driving? And so the beloved writes, one of the turnarounds are, I don't trust myself. And what would the evidence for that be? So she has written, I was confident and trust my true self fully. Oh, sorry, I'll reread that. The beloved says, if I was confident and trust my true self fully, I would not mind what others do towards me, even if it was the appearance of my parents seemingly saying things. That's very beautiful. I do not trust myself fully, which is why the ego in mind is looking to others for cues of trusting me or not trusting me, which implies duality, right? Rumi says, I think it was Rumi had a quote that says, there is a field beyond right and wrong, and I will meet you there. So the beloved here is really looking at the duality that is coming up in the mind of the ego, looking for cues of, can I be trusted or not trusted? Now, trusted or not trusted is two different sides of the same coin, which is why we are beginning to go to a third option beyond duality, which has nothing to do with trusting or not trusting, which Byron Katie calls what is. And then she goes on to state, which is part of duality. If I chose to fully trust myself and source or love or life in this instant, embodying full trust, I would not even perceive lack of trust outside of myself. Now, this is a very sweet and spot on point here, because what the beloved is actually saying here is, if I spot something in the world, I have got it. What this means is, whatever we perceive in the world is in our mind. For example, if I perceive someone as stupid, it doesn't really mean that I am stupid, as the true self is far beyond being stupid, as unconditional love. What this really means is, if I perceive something as stupid, I have this box in my mind of behaviors of what is a stupid behavior and what isn't a stupid behavior. Now, these boxes of what a stupid behavior is and what a stupid behavior isn't is based on past learning. How do we actually know what a stupid behavior is and what a stupid behavior is not, except through past learning? And the past is over and gone. So moving on here, the beloved goes on to state, the false idea of lack of trust, which is an ego quality, as the ego is the only untrustful and suspicious self, would not even enter my mind if I had full trust in Source and myself, being the true self. Therefore, I would not perceive it in others. Now, this is very beautiful because following on for what I just stated before about the boxes is once these boxes are plucked from the mind or thrown into the mental trash bin, and we don't have any boxes of what is a right behavior or what is a wrong behavior anymore, suddenly anyone can do anything, and there's no judgment about what certain behaviors are wrong and what certain behaviors are not wrong, because we don't have the boxes anymore. And so we have overlooked, we can say, this box, and we don't have any boxes in the world anymore. So because we aren't looking through the lens of what a wrong or right behavior is, we don't perceive that in the world. Now, as we know, perception is just a reflection of our state of mind. It's not really a fact. So this is what cause and effect being together means. It really just means that we are always perceiving what we have in our state of mind. We are always perceiving our state of mind. There is no exception to this because ideas leave not their source. Now, what does ideas leave not their source means? Well, if we fall asleep at night and start dreaming, where is the dreamscape? Where is the dream figures? Where is all of the dream happening? In the mind of the dreamer, right? So ideas leave not their source means dreams can't leave the mind of the dreamer. It's really impossible to have a nighttime dream outside of your own dream, outside of your own mind, I should say. And so in this sense, we can say that the dreamscape and the dream characters are not separate. There's nothing separate in the dreamscape or dream figures because it's all happening in the mind. And so we can't pluck out one dream body and go, well, this dream body is separate from this dream table over here because it's all mind. It's all the same. It's all connected, which is what quantum physics is saying. Through quantum entanglement, we know that if we affect one particle here, we can also affect another particle on the complete opposite side of the universe because it's all connected. It's all one. There's no separation between anything. And so the second turnaround that the beloved has written down here says, I don't trust them and their decisions, which is another beautiful turnaround. Now, these turnarounds, we're just trying on different ideas. Because the idea that my parents do not trust me driving is, affecting this very uncomfortable experience and very uncomfortable emotions within myself, seemingly. We are just trying on different ideas to see what is true and what is false. And so these are the real purpose of these turnarounds, is just to try on these different ideas to see, is actually what I'm believing actually true? Or actually, am I just believing unloving thoughts? And I need to overlook these unloving thoughts to, we can say, choose real thoughts of the true self, which are loving in nature and wholly, wholly loving and wholly gentle in nature. And so the second turnaround here is, I don't trust them and their decisions. And then the beloved says, yes, I am not trusting what is, as Byron Katie says, loving what is. Because my mind is misidentified with the ego and focused on what is not, in brackets, my parents changing to make the ego happy and peaceful, albeit temporary, I am not trusting them. I am not trusting them because I have abandoned my true self of love and non-judgment, and the ego, and the ego, being the self of lack of trust and lack of peace, gets projected out onto them. So really it is me that is looking with the ego in my mind and seeing it out in the world in them, which is projection, as the beloved says. So this is how projection works. When the mind doesn't want to take responsibility for something, it projects it out onto the world to try and get rid of the guilt, to try and get rid of the shame, to try and get rid of the uncomfortable emotion. But this is what projection basically does is this is the same as holding a hot potato, but just keeping, maybe one thing, like two fingers on it and trying to still hold the hot potato, but you're still burning fingers because you're not letting it go completely. You're still trying to hold on to the hot potato with, maybe a few fingers trying to just take as many fingers off as you can, but you're still holding it and you're still getting burnt. And so this is what projection does. It tries to give away something which only forgiveness can do. Because forgiveness, which is the correction to projection, is the experience of releasing something fully in which it is not experienced anymore. But projection is trying to give something away, but still keeping it. Just as if we have the hot potato, it's the same thing as saying, I'm going to hold on to this hot potato, but still keep my fingers on it, rather than just dropping it completely, which is what forgiveness does. Or inquiry, whatever word you want to use. Inquiry is the same as forgiveness. And so the third turnaround here is they do trust, and their decisions have nothing to do with me. Despite the ego yelling that they don't trust me, I am open to looking for evidence that they do trust me. Ooh, very, very sweet, because we know that perception is selective. And so the mind always, 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 always experiences or perceives what it wants to perceive. An example of this is, when we go out and buy a new car, before we buy the new car, we are totally oblivious to it when we're driving to the supermarket. But all of a sudden, we buy the car and we're like, oh my gosh, it's my car, it's my car. We see it like 300 times a day all of a sudden, just because it's in our awareness. We've all had this experience with some kind of thing, just once we buy something, it's just always in our awareness. Maybe it's numbers, maybe it's cars, maybe it's whatever it seems to be. And this is what the beloved is stating here. She goes on to state, after all, perception is selective, as we just said. And the mind sees what it wants to see. They do trust me because without the false ego thought that they do not trust me, I would not even be upset or see that they do not trust me. They do trust me because they let me drive the car, despite any words during the drive. They do trust me because behind all of the words and appearances, I trust that there is a loving presence of unconditional trust, love, and non-judgment. So basically what the beloved is stating here is very similar to Beauty and the Beast. Now, the beast, which is underneath the beastly appearance, is a very sweet prince. The whole movie of Beauty and the Beast is really a great symbol of looking beyond the outer appearance to what is really underneath the outer appearance. Looking beyond the beastly appearances to the love and presence that is underneath all of the appearances. And in that movie, it was the sweet prince that was underneath the beastly beast. The beloved goes on to state, I am open to seeing that what is said and done is not personal at all. It has nothing to do with me. That is the true self. Everyone is just acting out doubt thoughts in my own mind. Just like in the movie The Truman Show, all the characters were acting their part perfectly for Truman. It all worked out for good because eventually he woke up and left the fake world of control, fear, and illusions. Now, this is very beautiful indeed, because Once we start to get very clear on our purpose, using everything for forgiveness, or using everything for mind watching, or using everything for just being able to observe the ego and overlook it, we start to see, oh my gosh, everything is working together for the good of the whole. Everything is working together for the good of my own awakening. And so the only exception to this, I would say, is the ego's judgment. Everything works out together for good except in the ego's judgment. So whenever we are in the ego's judgment, we are not going to be a witness to how everything is working out together for good. But the fact that the mind has even chosen the ego and experiencing this upset is indeed working together for good, because this is allowing the mind to step out of that for good. Where is this taking us? This is taking us to an experience of consistent peace, like this consistent, like it's just beyond words even. It's taking it, imagine waking up every day and like having no cares, no concerns, no upsets come to mind. And you just wake up and you're like, ooh, goody, what's going to unfold today? And there's this excitement in your being. You know, this is what the seeming inner work is for. This is why we seem to be on the spiritual journey, because we are coming into this experience, which is, you know, ever present. It's always been there. However, it's just been covered over in awareness by all of these egoic thoughts that the mind that we keep misidentifying with. And so this is the main reason why we are getting clear on the purpose and exposing everything that is being misidentified with, which, and at the end of the day, is just the ego anyway. It just comes down to the ego. So it's not like we have to keep forgiving a branch or a leaf. When we first start out on self-inquiry or forgiveness, you know, it may seem like I have to forgive this, and then again I have to keep forgiving the same stuff over and over and over. But really, each time we start to forgive, we get clearer and clearer on what self-inquiry or forgiveness actually is. And this leads us from forgiving leaves to forgiving branches to forgiving, you know, to being able to see the whole tree in its entirety and going, whoa, whoa, I can just forgive this tree entirely, and that's it, that's done. We don't need to keep on forgiving each and every single branch, which we may have been doing at the very start. So this is how everything is working out for the good. Everything, without exception, is always working out in your best interest. And that is for your awakening, of course, for your experience of the ever-present and the peace that you are, that is the true self that is here right now. And so the final section on this inquiry states, any final comments from this inquiry? And the beloved states, from this inquiry, I now welcome this to happen again, as I got to see my own mistrust that I didn't want to see before. So it actually helped me, and I am grateful for the form being used this way to raise this up for me to look at. Now, this is very sweet because, as the beloved has just stated here, the grievance is actually being exchanged for gratitude. And that's the fruits of inquiry. We get to see, oh my gosh, if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for my brother doing whatever he seemed to do, I wouldn't have been able to see what was going on in my own mind. I wouldn't have been able to see a seeming obstacle to the experience of peace. And so everything that comes up is always very sweet. It's like a fruit, you know, when you wake up in the morning, you're like, man, I'm hungry. And you eat a fruit and you're like, oh, this is great. Now, this is from the perspective of awakening, you know, this is how we get to perceive everything that comes up. We're like, oh, great. This is one thing I get to see, and that's allowing me to see what's going on in my mind, so I can experience the peace. I can experience the fruits of the spirit from this. The beloved goes on to state, I can now see that it was my own decision to not take full responsibility for my own state of mind. that was the basis of the upset. It then got projected from my mind by the false ego onto my parents as a smoke and mirrors tactic to keep my attention of the false problem, when the problem was really my own decision to misidentify with the ego in my mind. Wow. So, this wasn't even seen prior to the upset, but going through the seeming upset and allowing the sweetness of inquiry to unfold, there's such gratitude that comes up. There's such it's like a sweet fragrance that starts to perfume from our mind, because we're like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I did not see how I was misidentifying with the ego in that moment, but through this inquiry, I'm getting clear on how I am using the power of the mind, or the power that is the true self. The beloved then says, I now have the opportunity to see that it was me that seemingly left my true self of love and full trust to see with the ego that was not trusting. Great, this is beautiful. So now we're taking responsibility for our state of mind. We're taking responsibility of sight here, which is the title of the previous video we did, the previous talk we did. Responsibility of sight. How am I choosing my experience? How am I choosing everything that I seem to experience day to day? No one actually did anything wrong, and nothing actually went wrong. It was only unloving thoughts and mind that were believed and acted out in a fearful perception of not being trusted. That's right. Nothing is ever going wrong in the world. Just like when you go to a movie theater and you're watching a movie, nothing is ever going wrong with the movie. Why? Because whatever is happening on the screen is whatever has been scripted to play out. Whoever directed the movie and wrote the script wanted it to be that way. So how could it be off in any way if that is the case? If the movie in this analogy has been scripted like that. So this is the state of mind or state of being that we're coming in. It's a very problemless state of being. It's a very exuberant state of being, because we are mind training, or we are being trained in a different way of viewing. We can say we are reperceiving from the true self. In the Matrix, Neo says to Morpheus, why do my eyes hurt? And Morpheus says, because you've never used them before. That's exactly the same with us. We're just beginning to reperceive from the true self that we always have been and always are. The beloved says, I now am able to open to letting everyone and everything be exactly as it is and exactly as they are, because I only suffer when I try to argue with what is. And this is very beautiful indeed, because Eckhart Tolle, who was another beautiful spiritual teacher, he calls the ego a dysfunctional relationship with the present moment. And this is all that an upset is. It's just a dysfunctional relationship with what is. The mind has created these illusions and these false narratives, or these false stories, or as Donald Trump says, fake news. There's this fake news going on in the mind, these fake stories of how something should be. For example, when you leave your job, the ego comes up in the mind and says, oh, you're going to end out on the street. And it provides all of these false mental images of you being on the street, right? And from this false mental story, then the emotions and perceptions come in as a distorted, unloving emotions and distorted, unloving perceptions of the world. And so this is all we are beginning to question here. We are beginning to question these mentally created stories, or in other words, illusions that the mind seems to create, that the ego seems to create, since the ego is an illusion itself. and we are unwinding our perception, or we are unwinding our misidentification on the mind level, so we can perceive clearly, so we can see clearly without a darkened glass, as the Bible says. The Bible says in Corinthians that we are looking through a darkened glass, which is the ego, which is these illusions or mentally created stories in the mind, and these unloving thoughts and beliefs. So carrying on here, from this embodiment from this embodiment of acceptance, love rushes in, because I am not making love or peace conditional. I now rest as the true self and love what is. It is all well and okay. Peace is ever present as the present, and not in my mental stories of making the ego safe in the past or future. Loving what is rather than being lost in what is not. And that's basically all the upset was. The upset was just this purpose of trying to have something in the world of perception change for me to be happy, rather than taking responsibility for my own state of mind and for the misidentification with the ego on the mind level, in which the ego's purpose is always something should change with that situation, something should change with that brother in order for me to be happy. And this is what creates the conditions on peace. And we wonder why we aren't peaceful, because we are so misidentified with the ego's purpose of these conditions being set on our peace that we have totally forgotten about the unconditional presence of peace that is already here, and that is already, as the presence that is aware of the ego and beyond, even as light, non-perceptual light, but as spirit. And this is where the acceptance comes from, for just being able to be like, wow, maybe I don't need to have a condition on peace. Maybe I don't even need to have my parents trust me in order to be peaceful. And then what stems from that? Wow, there's just this beautiful, beautiful acceptance of everyone and everything exactly as it is. I don't need to try and control anything in the world anymore. I don't need to try and control behaviors. I don't need to try and judge other beloveds. I don't need to try and analyze anything in the world anymore. I can just let everything be exactly as it is. Everything is working out for good. But I have just suddenly remembered that peace has always been with me all along, as the true self that I am, the I am presence, which is prior to the ego, which is prior to any thoughts, emotion, or perception. And so loving what is just this beautiful and fragrant acceptance of everyone and everything exactly as it is. We aren't trying to follow the ego's purpose of placing conditions on peace. We aren't trying to follow the ego's purpose of changing anything in order to be peaceful, because all of this implies time. What you already are as the peace, as the true self of peace, unconditional love, happiness, bliss, whatever name you want to call it, this experience, which is a present experience, gets projected out into the future where it's never found. And we wonder, oh, why am I not happy? Why am I spending my life doing something that doesn't make me happy, when we are just solely looking in the wrong direction? We have totally forgotten that peace has always been with us, that happiness has always been with us, that unconditional love, the essence of being, the essence of the true self, has always been there in the present as the present. And this is the experience that we are opening to, this ever-present experience of who one really is as the true self, as spirit, as light, as a child of light, as a child of God, whatever name you want to use, as a stepping stone for just this experience of stillness. It's really opening to a still mind, the stillness of the present. which is why this inquiry is so beautiful and sweet, because we get to unravel all of the complexities of the ego and just bring it back to what is actually here, what is actually now. When we leave our job and the ego brings up these scenarios in the mind, mentally created stories of ending out on the street, we can always come back to, well, where am I right now? I seem to be in perception on this chair, the roof. I have a roof over my head, seemingly. I have food in the pantry. Everything's okay. Everything is totally okay in the perceptual moment. Everything is totally fine. And so this is why we are unraveling the complexities, because everything is always fine. Everything is always perfect. Nothing is ever going wrong. It was just a misperception of the movie. We were misperceiving the movie as if the movie was going wrong. However, it was just the way we were perceiving the movie that just needs to be adjusted. We were perceiving the movie with the ego rather than in total acceptance that the true self is, in total acceptance that the spirit is. It was only ever a perceptual problem. And this is the simplicity of enlightenment, because who you truly are is always available this moment. It's always available in the present. Like, you can never not be who you are. Now, the awakening journey seems to be a process. It seems to take time until you recognize the true self. You're like, oh my gosh, I've always been the true self. I've always been what I was looking for in the world. And this is when the whole spiritual journey collapses, because you realize, oh my gosh, I was just misidentifying with this false self that was arising in front of my awareness. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is like opening to experience of like the biggest April Fool's joke you've ever played on yourself. And you start to laugh because you see how nothing is serious anymore. You see the lightheartedness, and you see the love underneath all of the appearances and underneath the ego even. You see how you're just so held and so loved. And this is why we are doing the inquiry. This is why we seem to pray, because we just want to experience the true self. We want to experience the love that we are. We want to know that we are safe as the safety of the present moment. And as I said before, we are always everything we are seeking in the world. If we are seeking safety, we are being brought to how I am the safety of the present. I am the safety I have always been looking for in the world. However, because the mind seems to be misidentified with the ego, the safety just gets projected out as if the safety comes from the world, rather than in questioning the misidentification with the ego and totally just overlooking that and resting as the being that I already am. So thank you all for joining us today. That went super quick. That went very, very quick. Well, it must be, because time doesn't exist. That's another one, as we have just stated. Time does not exist. It's all here right now. So very beautiful and very grateful that we get to share these ideas and just go into it together on how to unravel the complexities that we seem to be caught up in day to day. As life didn't really come with an instruction manual, because when you buy a phone here, when you buy anything in this world, it seems to come with an instruction manual, and you can just read the instruction manual in order to understand how to do it. But life, man, this experience that we seem to come with, it didn't really come with an instruction manual. So it's just very sweet and very beautiful to be able to come together in this one purpose of moving through these upsets back to the simplicity of what is always being in this very beautiful, holy instant, in this very whole present.